Yes, ma'am.
Were you going to make any stops at that time?
No, ma'am.
And then where would the movies have been after that point?
Tinseltown?
Okay. So would you have been coming back up Southside Boulevard heading north?
Yes, ma'am.
Prior to the time when you got to the intersection of Bay Meadows Road at Southside Boulevard, have you been through that intersection before?
Several times.
Are you very familiar with that intersection?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you familiar with the Gate gas station, which sits on the northeast corner?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And have you pulled into the Gate gas station before?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. At approximately 7:30 or several minutes thereafter, were you near that intersection?
Yes, ma'am.
And in which direction were you traveling on Bay Meadows Road from your
I
home?
think it's west.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you got to the Gate gas station, did you hear or see anything unusual right at that time?
Yes.
All right. No, I'm talking about when you first pulled up.
Oh, no.
All right. Which lane were you in to turn to go to the restaurant?
The second or the first hand left turn lane.
Okay. You would have been heading south then on Southside Boulevard?
Yes, ma'am.
And describe your vehicle.
Blue Honda CRV.
Where were you sitting?
Driver's seat.
Where was your wife sitting?
Passenger seat.
Where were the teenagers?
In the back seat.
Were your windows up or down?
Up.
Describe the weather conditions.
Dark, and I believe it was a bit chilly.
Okay. Was it raining at all?
Not that I remember.
Was there any thunder or any other weather noise to obstruct your hearing?
Not that I remember, no, ma'am.
Okay. Describe the flow of traffic at that intersection. Have you been through that intersection at various times?
Yes, ma'am.
And does the traffic flow vary with different times of the day?
Yes, ma'am.
On this particular holiday, or this particular afternoon on a Friday evening, what was it like?
Dead. Nothing going on.
Okay. Outside of normal traffic noise, was there any other loud noise, such as a car alarm, a store alarm, or anything else while you were at that intersection?
No, ma'am.
Were you the first car waiting to turn left on that inside lane?
Yes, ma'am.
What was the noise level inside of your own car?
Talking, just conversation between me and the teenagers.
What did you hear while you were at that red light?
Noises sounded like one of the teenagers actually said, "Is that fireworks?" And I was like, "No, that's gunfire."
You called it gunfire.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you recognize it as such when you heard it?
Yes, ma'am.
How many shots did you hear fired?
Several, more than 5, less than 10.
Okay. And what did you do when you heard those shots?
Turned around.
And how did you make that turn?
I made a left-hand turn like as if I was going to be going towards the Avenues Mall and made a U-turn to go back up Southside Boulevard.
On your monitor, the state will show you State's Exhibit 3 in evidence. And I want to ask you, sir, is that a picture that you can use to show the jurors where you were?
Yeah.
All right, if you touch that screen, a mark should come up. And can you just show them approximately where you were at the intersection?
Right there.
Okay. And go ahead and draw the U-turn that you did. And then what did you do after that to get into the Gate gas station?
Draw it.
You can draw it, yes. How did you know the shots had come from that direction?
Just heard it. It sounded like it come from that direction.
Okay. Why did you go back to the Gate gas station?
I don't know. Something inside me told me to go.
All right. Were you going to try to help if you were needed?
Yes.
Okay. Where did you pull in at the Gate gas station?
I pulled into the first gas pump to the left in the gas station.
All right. Can you just show the jurors, just touch that photo as to where you first pulled in? Was it dark outside? Was it
yeah.
nighttime?
Yes.
Were the Gate gas station lights on?
Yes, ma'am.
Was it fairly well lit?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you pulled in, where did you specifically park your car?
Right there where that dot is, there's a pump right under it. I don't remember what pump it was or anything.
Sir, did you see anything obvious that could be connected to the shooting when you stopped your car?
When I was pulling in, a car was pulling out pretty quickly.
All right. Describe that car.
It was a small car. I don't know exactly the make or model or color. I wasn't really paying attention to it. Just kind of pulled out very quickly, and I pulled in.
All right. Did you ever see that car again that evening?
No, ma'am.
All right. Then after that, what took your attention to anything else going on at the Gate gas station?
There was a red vehicle, a SUV, backing up from the vicinity of the other shops, pulled into a spot in front of the gas station, and there was a young man that got out and was very upset.
All right. First, let me ask you to show the jurors what you mean by the vicinity of the other shops. Point to that and then draw an arrow. Okay. And in which direction did the car, you say it was in reverse, backing up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and where did it back to?
There's a parking spot right there.
All right. And were you out of your vehicle at this time?
No, I was in my vehicle. I just put it into park, and I saw it backing up.
All right. What did you see next?
I pulled in forwards into the parking spot. Young man got out, very
Do you
upset.
recall which side of the car the young man got out?
I believe it was the driver.
Did you see any type of weapon in that young man's hand at all?
No,
Did you see any weapons coming out of that vehicle being thrown anywhere?
no.
Did you have a clear view of the driver when he got out of the red vehicle?
His side, no. I mean, I saw the door open and I saw his head, but I was on the opposite side of the vehicle.
Did you see him make any throwing throwing gestures towards the bushes near his vehicle?
No, ma'am.
Did you hear or see the other occupants of the vehicle at that particular time?
I heard them.
What did you hear?
Upsetness. One of the young men was yelling, "He's not moving."
I'm sorry, you're going to need to speak up. I don't know if it's the microphone. I'm having a hard time. Just go ahead. What did you hear him say next? Or what did you hear the young man say?
One of the young men was saying, "He's not moving."
He's not moving.
Yes,
Did
ma'am.
you know at that point in time to whom they were referring?
No.
What did you do then?
Walked up to the car to see what was going on.
All right. Did you have any concerns at all?
I pulled up to the car. There was a young man that had been hit. I checked for a pulse. There was another young man that was crying, saying he wasn't moving. And
Can you describe in a little more detail how the young man who you said wasn't moving, where was he in relation to the other young man, and in which seat in the car were they?
I believe it was the passenger side, or the driver's side rear. And the young man was holding him and just saying he's not moving.
Rear seat.
Yes, ma'am.
And on the driver's side, did
Yes,
you
ma'am.
know the young man that was sitting there?
No, ma'am.
And where was the other young man in relation to that young man?
The passenger side.
Okay, was he sitting upright?
Yes, ma'am.
The person on the passenger side?
They were kind of together. I don't know if he was straight up.
Humped together?
Yeah.
Okay. And what did you do at that point?
I checked for a pulse. I didn't feel one. I looked over my shoulder and there was an officer that had pulled up.
Okay. Were you coming in through the driver's side of the vehicle to try to give aid?
Yes, ma'am.
What was your training that made you believe you could give at least some aid, initial aid?
I was a junior lifeguard growing up and just done different things. I was actually at the time looking into doing EMT, and so
Short of basic CPR, did you know any other life-saving techniques?
other than, put pressure on it, no, ma'am.
Okay. Now, did you help try to render any further aid to the young man that was not moving?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did you do that?
I went up to the officer that had pulled on the scene. I asked for gloves so I could assess the situation. Walked over. Again, felt for a pulse, didn't feel one. Asked the officer to come over and help me pull him out to where we could get him on the ground to start CPR or to start trying to put pressure on the wounds until the paramedics got there.
All right. Where the paramedics were not there yet, is that correct?
No, ma'am.
And did that officer assist you?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you attempt some sort of life-saving efforts while that young man was on the ground?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you know that young man?
No, ma'am.
Did you know any of the young man in that red vehicle? Any
No,
of the
ma'am.
young men in that red vehicle?
No, ma'am.
All right. Did you know the officer who pulled up?
No, ma'am.
And at what point did Jack's Fire and Rescue arrive?
After we pulled him out, probably about maybe 5 minutes.
Is that your estimate of the
Yes,
time?
ma'am. I'm not positive the exact time.
Did you ever see any signs of life in the young man that you had pulled out of that red car?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever hear him utter anything?
No, ma'am.
Could you tell whether or not he was even breathing when you and the officer pulled him out of the car?
He had no pulse and he was not. It did not look like he was breathing.
Okay. And the other young man who was in the back seat with him, did you know his name?
No, ma'am.
And what did he do when you all pulled the gentleman out of the car? What did that other young man do?
He just kind of stood to the side and watched.
What was his demeanor at that time?
Very shook up.
I'm sorry?
Very shook up.
Did you see any tears on any of those young men?
Yes, ma'am.
On how many of them?
All of them.
Okay. Did you ever hear them express any anger towards anyone, much less the person who had shot their friend?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever hear them use any curse words towards anyone?
Not that I recall.
Did you hear any curse words towards the shooter?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever even know who the shooter was at that time?
No, ma'am.
We're going to show you one last picture, which is in evidence as State's Exhibit 8, and I would just like for you to show the jurors, ignore the tag inset, that's a composite exhibit for later, but does this picture sort of depict where the car was when you walked up to it?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall if the driver's doors were open or closed?
As I said, I think when the driver door opened when he got out.
All right, and can you show the jurors the area where you and the officer laid this young man on the ground? All right. Did you leave anything of your own there at the scene?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And then once rescue arrived, did you back away and let them and law enforcement take over the scene?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you stay at the gas station to tell police just what you knew of what
Yes, ma'am.
happened? Now, sir, there is a sidewalk with what appears to be some hedges right behind the yellow post. Do you see that area?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall seeing any weapons anywhere in that area?
No, ma'am.
And at any point when you looked into the car or reached into the red car, did you ever see or feel anything that you felt could be a weapon?
No, ma'am.
May I have just a moment with co-counsel?
Yes, ma'am.
That's all I have for this witness, Your
All
Honor.
right, thank you. Mr. Strolacross.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Williams, while you were giving CPR to Jordan Davis, what was Tommy Storns doing?
Walking around with his hands on his head.
Well, how could you be watching Tommy Storns if your mouth is on Jordan Davis's mouth and your hands are on Jordan Davis's chest?
Objection.
Sustained.
Testimony.
Did you give Jordan Davis CPR?
Yes, but it wasn't mouth-to-mouth CPR.
All right, what did you do?
I put my hands on his chest trying to produce a heartbeat.
Okay, and let me ask you this. You were a junior lifeguard at 16 years old, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
How
Sure.
old are you today?
I'm 22.
And how old were you in 2012 when this happened?
21.
Okay. So from 16 to 21, any other CPR, life-saving, any type of medical training at all other than at 16 to be a junior
ma'am.
lifeguard?
No, sir.
Okay. And when you're giving CPR to Mr. Jordan Davis, are you focused on what you're doing?
Very much so.
You would agree that this was a very traumatic event for you because this is the first time you ever gave CPR, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But you're telling this jury that as you're giving Jordan Davis CPR, you're watching what other people are doing around you?
I can pay attention, yeah.
Okay. And again, you have no medical training, correct?
No, sir.
No law enforcement training?
No, sir.
No first responder training?
No, sir.
The only thing you've testified today is you were thinking about a career at that time, correct?
Yes, sir.
Have you pursued that career? Are you an EMT right now?
Nope.
Have you taken any type of medical training or law enforcement as of today?
No.
Okay. Isn't it true you used to own a firearm?
Yes.
And you got rid of that firearm?
Objection, outside the scope.
Sustained.
Mr. Williams, it took you about 1.5 to 2 minutes before that light turned green, made a U-turn, went all the way down the street, another U-turn and pulled in, correct?
How long did you say?
About 1.5, 2 minutes, is that fair?
Probably.
Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Do you think that's a fair representation of your time?
I didn't have a stop clock on me. I don't know. It's probably about a minute to turn around and everything. The light was green.
Okay. And at that point, you waited a minute for it to turn green, correct?
No, it had turned green when we heard the gunshots, and that's when I made the U-turn.
All right. And then you went all the way down, made another U-turn, and came in.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You testified that you saw a car leaving the parking lot. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But you have no idea whose car that is, correct?
No, sir.
Is it a possibility that could have been somebody else also leaving the gas station after shots were fired?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're not here to testify that that was Mr. Dunn's vehicle, correct?
I don't know whose vehicle it was.
All right. So the relevance is almost nothing because you're not sure who it is, correct?
I don't know whose vehicle it was, yeah.
Now, you're on scene for about another minute before that SUV backs up, correct?
No, it was backing up as I was pulling into my parking spot.
Okay. And Can you tell me what the people did in the SUV when it was in the other parking lot?
Nothing. They
You
were
didn't see
backing
it?
up.
Right, well, you didn't even see it stop, correct?
It was in backing up motion.
Right, so when you saw it, it was already backing up, correct?
Correct.
And how close to the gate parking lot was it when you saw it?
I mean, probably 40 to 60 feet.
Okay, and that's from the parking lot, correct? You have to say it out loud.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, the picture you just saw with the state's evidence, you're talking about 40 to 60 feet from where that red Durango parked, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now, how many first responders, meaning law enforcement officers, were on scene when you got there?
When I got there, I believe one police officer was pulling in.
Okay, so you pull in the same time as law enforcement, correct?
No, I'm sorry. When I was sitting there and saw the car pull in, an officer had pulled up.
And because we keep saying the word car a lot, are you talking about when the red Durango pulls in, there's no law enforcement on scene, correct?
Correct. It pulled in. I looked around. Law enforcement officer was pulling on scene.
Okay, and you saw, I believe you said you saw the back window shot out, is that correct?
I believe the back was shot, yeah,
Okay, and that's just based on your recollection today?
if I remember, yeah.
Okay, and would you agree, was this a very traumatic experience for you? Have you ever been involved in anything like this before?
Not to this grade, no.
Okay, and you have no training to deal with anything like this, is that correct?
No.
Now, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, did I hear you asked law enforcement first responders for a pair of gloves?
I asked the officer for gloves, yes.
Okay, and well, would you agree that officers are first responders and trained in first response techniques?
I would guess that they have CPR training, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know that. I mean, I would assume it.
Okay, and by the time you asked for those gloves, how many officers were on scene?
One.
Just the one? Okay, and is that well, let me ask you this, when you checked for his pulse, do you have any type of medical training to check for a pulse?
From CPR?
And that's when you were 16? Mm-hmm. Okay, and at that point, you then asked the officer to help you get Mr. Davis out of the vehicle?
Yes.
Still only one officer on scene?
At that time, other officers had come on scene.
All right, and
I don't
you asked-
remember how many.
Okay, and at that point, you asked them, is that correct?
There was one officer on scene when I asked for gloves.
Yes.
When I got gloves, I went over, checked for a pulse again. I went back to an officer and said, hey, there's no pulse. He's not moving. We probably need to go ahead and pull him out and try to see if he's okay.
Now, did you tell these officers the only medical training I have is when I was 16 as a junior lifeguard?
No.
Did they ask you?
No.
They just handed you a pair of gloves and said, okay, go ahead and do it.
I said I'd like to check on the young man in there, and they said okay.
All right. And then when you asked them to help you pull them out, at that point, did they ask you for any type of medical training that you had?
No.
They just agreed, okay, we'll help you pull them out.
Yes.
Now, since this has happened, have you seen anything about this on TV?
Not really. I do my best to kind of not do much attention to it.
Okay. Even when it first happened?
I remember my wife telling me that something had come on.
And do you recall going on Facebook to seek out the Davis family?
Yes.
Okay. And you did that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And matter of fact, when you went to the memorial, you sought out Tevin Thompson and Leland Brunson, correct?
Yes.
And I believe, if I recall, you said Tommy Storms was not there?
I don't remember if he was or not. I don't remember. I didn't personally see him. I didn't personally talk to him or interact with him that I recall.
Would you have recognized him if you did see him?
Oh, I would have recognized him if I don't know if he could have been somewhere else, but.
Okay. And again, when you're asking for gloves, checking a pulse, pulling Mr. Davis out of the car, and administering CPR, are you telling this jury that you were still cognizant of where everybody was outside of that gate gas station?
I had a pretty decent idea. I was kind of looking around because I was hoping that rescue would show up soon.
All right. And you said rescue took about 5 minutes?
Right about that, yeah.
All right. Nothing further, Judge.
Very
Ms. Court?
briefly.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Williams, is it particularly complicated to feel for someone's pulse?
seeing the photographs and this exhibit here, and there'll be others, you will get copies of and be allowed to take back into the jury room with you to review during your deliberations.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, where was Miss Alderman at the time you were doing this and giving this piece of paper to the clerk?
Well, when I went in there, I thought she was in the bathroom. I guess while I was writing down the license plate number, she crept on past me, sort of. I didn't see her go by.
I'm sorry, I missed the last thing you said. We just took the photo down. Go ahead, repeat the last thing you said.
I said that when I was giving the license plate number to the lady, she must have walked on past me from the bathroom, because I went in there to go see if she was there to get her to go, and she was already in the truck.
She was in the truck.
Yes, ma'am.
To your knowledge, at that time, had she seen or heard anything?
She didn't see nothing.
Did you leave the gate and go get back into your truck?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Atkins, did you leave that gas station at that point?
Yes, ma'am.
Why did you do that?
2 reasons. One, I was terrified. 2, I had absconded from my probation, my misdemeanor probation. I didn't really want to deal with the police.
All right. Tell the jurors what happened that made you return to that gas station.
She slapped me. It made me go back.
Who slapped you?
Lauren did.
Had you told her what you had seen,
Yes, ma'am. When we got on the south side,
and she made you go back up there?
she forced me to go back.
Did you want to go back up there, Mr. Atkins?
No, ma'am, I did not.
Did you know that by going back up there, there would be police officers there?
I was sure of it.
All right. And then, did you pull back into the parking lot?
Not immediately.
Tell the jurors why you couldn't pull back in at that time.
Police had it taped off, so I couldn't go by. There was, according to the officer, a murder investigation. Or, well, at that time it was a shooting. That's what they called it.
All right. How long do you think you were gone from the time you got back into the car and pulled out with Miss Alderman to the time you returned to the gate gas station?
5 minutes, give or take.
And in that time, sir, did you tell anyone else besides Miss Alderman about what happened?
No.
Did you see any other police officers at the destination where you drove? Did you go back to the Winn-Dixie?
No, I didn't make it there.
Okay. You turned around and went back.
I turned right on the south, or left on the south side, and made a U-turn on Bay Meadows into the gate.
Okay. And did you then tell the police what you had witnessed?
No, I told them that I saw everything go down, but I didn't tell them the details of what I saw.
Right, but did they ask you to remain at the scene?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you remain at the scene?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Knowing that they could determine that you were on probation at the time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did Miss Alderman wait there with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you eventually go down to the police memorial building in downtown Jacksonville?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you speak to the police and convey to them what you've conveyed here to this jury?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you ever shown that brown piece of paper again?
No, that's the first time I've seen it since that night.
And sir, did there come a time at your deposition when you talked to Mr. Guy about hopefully helping you out of this trouble you were in?
Yes, ma'am.
And why did you do that?
Got 7 years. That's a long time, and I'm young.
Okay.
You're only young once.
To your knowledge, while your charges were pending in Clay County, even though it's our office, do you know whether anyone, or did you or your lawyer ever directly contact us about your situation?
Overruled.
No, ma'am. We never.
Was there ever a part of your plea bargain on the record in Clay County that mentioned that you were a witness in this case?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever try to make contact with me or Miss Wolfson or Mr. Guy prior to the time you were brought back for a deposition?
No, ma'am.
And as you testify here today in front of the jury, are you expecting any special benefit from your testimony?
No, ma'am.
Tell these jurors why you went back to the gate gas station.
Sustained.
Tell them why you're testifying here in court today.
do the right thing.
We have just a moment with co-counsel.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Cox? That's all I have for Mr. Atkins.
Mr. Troller, Cross?
Thank you,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Atkins, just to stay on topic from that, at the time you got sentenced, did you know what your sentence would be?
Yes.
Okay. And when I took your deposition, Mr. Guy was there, I was there, correct?
Yes, sir.
And prior to you entering even in the room is when you approached Mr. Guy privately and asked for those benefits and favors, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you asked him for two based on your testimony in this case, isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
One was you wanted to stay in Jacksonville as long as possible, isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
You didn't want to go back to prison, did you?
No, sir.
The other one is you asked if you could get some of your sentencing reduction for you being a witness in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Isn't it true that after your depot was over that day, you got to stay in Jacksonville for over a month before you were sent back to DOC?
I stayed for a month and a day, and then I was sent back to DOC.
Okay, so the answer to my question was yes. you
Yes, sir.
stayed for over a month, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you did receive a benefit that you asked for, is that fair?
I guess you can say that.
It just wasn't long enough for your liking?
It was fine enough for me, sir.
Now, you indicate that you heard two shots and then the red SUV backed out, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you said you believed it backed out straight, but you're foggy on that. That was your testimony, correct?
Yes, sir.
You also admit that you were homeless at the time when these crimes occurred that you're now in custody for, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me ask you this. On the evening that this happened, did you have any type of drugs or alcohol or synthetic marijuana in your system that night?
No, sir.
And you're saying you couldn't hear music or you just ignored it?
I couldn't hear it. It's a possibility that I just ignored it because, like I said, I lived in the city a few years. Just, you start to drown out those things.
Okay. But if something was playing music loud enough to make mirrors or vibrate and shake, have you been around cars that are on the street that do that?
Yeah, that was not happening.
Okay. And there's a difference. Would you agree there's a difference between loud music and then maybe
Ridiculous.
something- I'm sorry?
Ridiculous music.
Ridiculously loud?
Yeah, that was not happening.
Okay. And you've even been around it where it's so loud it may even hurt your ears. You think that's fair?
Yes, sir.
And if it was that loud that night, you'd be able to hear that ridiculously loud music?
Oh, yes.
Now, prior to any gunshots, were you looking over at the red SUV?
For a second, when the driver came out of the gate and hopped into the red SUV,
Okay, and you're talking about the gentleman with the dreadlocks, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. And how long was he in that red SUV before that first shot was fired?
Less than a minute, probably.
And again, you can't testify to what words were exchanged, right?
No, sir.
You can't testify to what actions happened on the other side of that Durango, correct?
No, sir.
And matter of fact, isn't it true you told the police that night that it actually looked like Mr. Dunn, who you now know as Mr. Dunn, was shooting in the ground as the SUV was leaving? Is that true?
I thought it was, but I really have no experience with a firearm.
Okay. And based on that lack of experience, I'm assuming, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, correct me if I'm wrong, that would have freaked you out being in that situation.
Oh, I was terrified.
And you were so terrified, you didn't even realize that your longtime serious girlfriend walked right by you inside the gas station, correct?
Not at all. Never saw her.
And afterwards, talking to her when you came back, you realized she's in the car. She must have walked right by you.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not like you walked around the store, went into the bathroom, anything like that.
Well, when I got in there and I gave the lady at the desk the license plate number, I went into the, not gonna lie, I knocked down the girl's bathroom. I was terrified. I want to get Lauren out of there, and she wasn't in there.
Okay. So at that point, though, it's safe to assume you're at the front desk, right by the front door, and Lauren walked right by you.
Yeah, she went right by.
Now, were you there when the SUV pulled back?
I was still inside the store when it pulled back.
Okay. are you familiar with that area? I know you were staying across the street over by the Winn-Dixie, but are you familiar with that plaza? I think Miss Corey put a picture up that you were drawing on.
I'm very familiar with that area.
Okay, that plaza and parking lot was actually open where people could drive into that plaza, correct?
No, not from where I was going. The police stopped me as soon as I got to the turn off the driveway.
Right, as you came up the driveway, you just couldn't pull into the gate parking lot.
No, I couldn't even pull into the parking lot.
All right, how did you get into the parking lot? You said you drove around and pulled in?
I did a U on the south side, came to the first right driveway, and the officer, he waved me down. He said, "You can't go." And I told him that I saw what happened. And then he asked me to pull up a little bit further onto the grass and sit there for a few minutes.
And that was right outside the gate gas station, correct?
Yes, sir.
So there's actually extra entrances into that plaza north, further north, correct?
Yes, sir.
You never even had to go down there, did you?
No.
So again, you have no idea if those were open and letting people into the plaza. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
Judge, I have nothing further. Thank you, sir.
Ms. Corey? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Atkins, did Ms. Wilson ever tell you what your testimony should be?
No, ma'am.
Did any member of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office ever tell you what your testimony should be?
No, ma'am.
Did you discuss anything about the actual facts of the case with anyone else at the gate gas station while you were there?
No.
And when you were at the police memorial building, did you get together with any of the young men in the red Dodge Durango and talk about what any of you should say?
I didn't talk to a soul. I was withdrawn.
Why were you withdrawn?
Scared.
Has anyone from my office told you what to testify to here in court today?
No, ma'am.
And sir, isn't it true that let me ask you a question. Do you recall the day of your deposition?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall talking to Mr. Guy about, was there anything that could be done about the length of your sentence?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall being placed under oath in the deposition to talk to Mr. Strolla?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you hear Mr. Guy tell Mr. Strolla every word of conversation that the two of you had had about your request for leniency?
Yes, very clearly.
In detail.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, Mr. Strolla asked you whether or not you had been granted leniency by remaining in Duval County. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
What is your understanding of what happens to your gain time in prison when you come back to Duval County?
Your Honor, I'm only going to object to speculation in terms of relevance as well, Your Honor. I don't think he's, if I may, Your Honor, approach.
All right. Would the court report, please? All right, the objection's overruled. Go ahead, Ms. Corey.
Mrs. Simpkins, do you mind reading back my specific question for Mr. Atkins?
What is your understanding of what happens to your game time in prison when you come back to Duval County?
You don't get none. You lose it.
You lose that benefit in prison from staying here, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, it's true.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
May he be excused?
He may.
Mr. Stroller?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. You're excused. State's next witness, please.
Your Honor, the state next calls Mariah Grimes. And may Mr. Stroll and I approach, Your Honor, as she's approaching.
Yes, Mariah Grimes.
It's taken care of.
Oh,
Yes, sir, that was the issue.
okay. Mariah Grimes, please. Ms. Grimes, if you could come all the way up to the front for me, please, ma'am. And right up here to the front, if you'll raise your right hand, the clerk will administer the oath to you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
All right, ma'am, if you'll come right around here and have a seat for me in the witness chair. And if you scoot yourself up to the microphone, be sure and speak right into the microphone and speak loudly so everybody can hear you, all right?
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Be sure and speak up.
Okay.
Ms. Wolfson, go right ahead.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Could you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Okay. Mariah Grimes, MariahGrimes.
Ms. Grimes, where are you currently employed?
Gate Petra.
Now, Ms. Grimes, how long have you been employed? Excuse me, let me strike that. Is that Gate Petroleum?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And Ms. Grimes, how long have you been employed by Gate Petroleum?
Since September 2012.
Now, Ms. Grimes, could you just speak into the microphone?
Oh, September 2012.
Okay, thank you. That's better. Now, do you work at a particular Gate gas station store?
Yes, the Southside and Bay Meadows store.
And how long have you worked at that particular store?
Since I started.
Could you tell the jury what your role is at Gate Petroleum?
Okay, I'm a CSR, which is a customer service representative, and I just ring customers up and do the cleaning and all that good stuff.
Now, Ms. Grimes, I'd like to turn your attention back to November 23rd of 2012. Were you working on that particular day?
Yes, I was.
And were you working then at that particular Gate gas station store?
Yes, I was.
And that's here in Jacksonville?
Yes, ma'am.
In Duval County?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, Ms. Grimes, what shift were you working on that day?
Second shift, which is 2 to 10 p.m.
And during that day when you were you working then as a customer service representative?
Yes, I was.
When you're working at the Gate gas station stores, are you assigned to a particular register?
You get the register that's open when you go in, when you clock in.
Okay, and on this particular day, who else was working?
Lillian, which was our assistant manager at the time, and a coworker, Darion.
Ms. Grimes, do you remember which particular register you were working at?
Yes, I was at register number 3.
Now, could you explain to the jury when you're walking in to the gas station what the store looks like in terms of where the registers are?
Okay, when you walk in, you're immediately facing register number 2. To your right is register 1, and to your left is register number 3.
Now, Ms. Grimes, are those registers in a line?
They curve, so you're facing 2. 1 is off to the right side, and then over to the left is register number 3.
Okay, and are those 3 registers, is it one particular, strike that, is it one continuous counter?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you work on register 3 then for your entire shift?
Yes.
Okay, and do you know where your coworker Darian was working?
Yeah, he had register number 1.
And then where was your assistant manager Lillian working?
She had register number 2.
Ms. Grimes, during your shifts, did anything out of the ordinary happen?
Not until the incident with,
Go ahead.
no, the incident with the gunshots.
Now, Ms. Grimes, where were you when you heard those gunshots?
I was behind my register number 3.
Were you helping any customer when you were behind your register?
Yes, I had a customer.
Who were you helping?
A woman who was buying a bag of chips and a bottle of wine.
Do you remember what she looked like?
She was tall, I would say mid-40s, brunette hair down to her shoulders, and she was dressed in nice clothes.
What happened after you heard those first gunshots?
Me and my customer looked out front, outside the window, to see what was going on.
Now, can you explain to the jury from behind register 3, what window would you be looking out of? In reference to where the front doors are.
Okay. The front door is facing register 2, so our first window pane that you could see from register number 3. Like, I don't know how to describe it. You could just see out to the parking spots and the gas pumps. I don't know.
And now, Ms. Grimes, I'm showing you State's Exhibit 5. Is that up on your screen?
Okay.
And looking at State's Exhibit 5, can you circle which window it is that you would have been able to see out of?
This one. And the column kind of blocks the shot. Do you have a better one?
I was just about to get to it.
Okay.
State's Exhibit 6.
Yeah, the same one then. This one.
And then I believe State's Exhibit 10. Is that a closer
Okay, yeah.
photograph?
Both of them.
Okay, so those are then the 2 windows that you would have been able to see out of?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, Ms. Grimes, in looking at State's Exhibit 10, can you tell the jury whether or not there's any signage on those windows that would prevent your view?
At the time there wasn't, but the first window, the one that doesn't have any sign, is the one I can see out the best.
Okay.
And then
Ms. Grimes, how many gunshots did you first hear?
I heard about 3 gunshots, and that's when I looked out the window.
What did you see when you looked out of the window?
A black 4-door car and hands holding a gun rested on the windowsill.
Now, in looking at State's Exhibit 10, Ms. Grimes, can you put an X where you saw that black car? Now, I know you stated you saw hands.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, was that 2 hands?
Yes.
Okay, and what were they holding?
They were holding a silver gun.
Could you see which direction the gun was pointed?
They were pointed outside of the driver's window, so north, I believe.
So would they have been pointing into that parking spot that's right to the left of the X?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you tell from where you were if there was anything next to that black car?
I did not see another car next to him. The car, I'm sorry.
Now, Ms. Grimes, from where you were inside at the gas station, could you tell whether or not a door was open on that black car?
Yes, the door was not open.
Okay. Now, after initially looking out the front window, what did you do?
I got down and I said, he's shooting. And I got down and then I got back up and then looked out the window. And by that time, my customer had walked already to the door, the front door, and I watched her get into the passenger side of the car and then drive away.
Now, Ms. Grimes, before she walked out of the store, did you hear any other gunshots?
Yes.
How many gunshots in total did you hear?
I heard about 6 more.
And when you heard those 6 more gunshots, was that customer, was she still inside of the store?
Yes, she was making her way to the door.
Now, when she walked towards the door, Ms. Grimes, could you tell where she went when she got to the door?
What do you mean?
When your customer got to the front door of the Gate store, could you see where she went?
Yes, I watched her walk and get into the passenger side of the car.
And once she got into the passenger side of the car, did you see what happened
They just pulled from the spot and left.
Now, when the front door opened and that customer walked out, could you hear anyone speaking or anything like that outside?
Just her. She said, "Michael, what's going on?" And then she left.
Ms. Grimes, prior to these gunshots, could you hear any loud music from outside the store?
I could not hear any music.
Do you remember hearing any sort of an argument from within the store?
No, ma'am.
Now, Ms. Grimes, do you know whether or not the gate station has surveillance?
I know we have surveillance inside the store, but not outside.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time I would ask to publish the gate station surveillance video.
All right.
Again. Which is State Exhibit 168.
Hot dog. I know it's kind of old now, but I'm cool. I'll take it down home to my dad. He'll eat it.
Yes, ma'am. Next to me, to my left, is register 2, and then where he's standing, my coworker is register 1. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not sure. This is
Good luck.
I apologize, Your
That's all right. I just couldn't hear.
Ms. Grimes, I'm looking at the right corner of the surveillance footage. Do you see that receipt?
Yes, ma'am.
Does that then correspond to what the customer is purchasing?
Yes.
Okay.
swear to God. He's shooting. Right here, in front of us. Call the cops. The cops are right across the street. Oh my God. Where? This guy right here. You don't walk out here, honey. That might not be a smart thing to do. Oh my God. That was like so scary. Did you say that it's like her? Yeah, look at her.
No, Ms. Grimes, on this screen, oops. I know she's a little off to the corner. Is that then your assistant manager, Lillian Christensen?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Did you then have a conversation with her and tell her what you had seen?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, at some point, Ms. Grimes, did the police arrive on scene?
Yes, they did.
Prior to the police arriving on scene, did you ever go outside?
No, I didn't.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
And for the record, I'm showing Ms. Grimes has previously been entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 169.
All right.
Ms. Grimes, I'm showing you Exhibit 169. Do you recognize this?
Yes, I printed it out for the policeman.
And what is State's Exhibit 169?
The receipt that the lady that was purchasing the stuff, her receipt.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am. And again, ladies and gentlemen, if you can't, you in the back row, if you can't see it very well, you'll have an opportunity to look at it carefully and more closely when you take it back to the deliberate your verdict.
Now, Ms. Grimes, did the woman who was making the purchase, did she actually complete her purchase?
She never took the products or her change, but I did cash her out.
Okay. Have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Just one last question, Ms. Grimes.
Okay.
We'll just take a moment to get the screenshot of the surveillance.
Is that microphone on the podium working? Yeah. Battery die?
This one? Now it's on.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Grimes, looking at the screenshot that's up there right now, can you just circle for the jury where the front door is?
Yes, 1 second.
Okay. I have no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Mr. Stroll across?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Grimes. How are you?
I'm fine.
Looking at that video that was just up there, you're familiar with the gate surveillance video. Obviously, in the store, you know there's videos there.
Yes, yes, sir.
And there's several of them.
Yes.
And matter of fact, on that video, you could click on every different video and get that different angle from that camera, correct?
Yes.
And audio is being recorded, correct?
Yes.
And matter of fact, isn't it true the first time you actually saw that video, you saw it online because your aunt told you the news posted your video online, right?
Yes.
Okay. And when you took your depo, you actually referred in your answers of, I didn't remember saying that until I saw it online.
What part are you talking about? What did
The
I
part where
say
you
that I
ducked
didn't?
down? Do you remember not even ducking down until you saw it on the video and saying, oh my God?
I don't remember saying that, to be honest.
Okay. And do you recall, again, the first time seeing it, it was out in the news and your family member had you watch it?
Yes, a few months later, I believe.
Okay. And isn't it true that your testimony is the gentleman you saw shooting that gun, his hands were on the windowsill the entire time, correct?
Yes.
And by windowsill, you mean the driver's windowsill?
Yes.
Right. He wasn't leaning out of the car.
No.
He didn't open the door and jump out of the car.
I didn't see him do that, no.
Okay. And matter of fact, when you popped back up, you could clearly see him, correct?
I just saw hands. I didn't know if it was male or female.
But I meant you could clearly see in front of you.
Oh, yes, I could.
And just, I know the video is kind of on an angle. May I move your arm?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And I know on video it's kind of funny. Even though this is cash register 3, let's pretend you're at your register 3, right?
Okay.
Register 2 would be right over here.
Yes.
And then register 1 would kind of be around the corner where Darian Eights was. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And matter of fact, there's cameras at the front door, cash register 1, 2, 3, the office, the cooler, things like that, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You can see that from the same video. You just have to click on it, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, from where you are, let's just again assume you're cash register 3 from the video. What you saw was directly in front of you, correct?
Yes.
All right. So, not to say cash register 1 is the first one in line. The way gate works, it's kind of odd. I know it's on an angle, right? Mm-hmm. And then when
Yes.
you walk in the door, you go to the left, your cash register is right there, correct?
Yes.
And the very first spot is right in front of you, correct?
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
Isn't it also true that you couldn't see anything to your right next to that car shooting?
I couldn't see 2 more spaces past.
Okay. And isn't it true you couldn't see any vehicle or red SUV next to him? Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
And you couldn't see anything to 2 spaces over. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then so there's no SUV next to him.
No.
There's no SUV in the third spot next to him.
Correct.
And then you couldn't see the fourth because there's a column, correct?
Yes, there
And at
is.
that point, there's some things on the window that blocked your view?
Correct.
Okay. So your testimony is when you saw the firing and you see the hands on the windowsill, nobody's next to him for 2 spots, correct?
Correct.
And you'd also agree there was a lot of news coverage in this case. We talked about that a little bit.
Yes, none directed towards me though. Like I never.
Well, not that you gave interviews, but
yeah.
they put your video, they put that online, right?
Yes, they did.
And that's how you found it. It wasn't the state attorney's, your aunt showed it to you.
Yes.
Okay. And isn't it true that night, and again, you were freaked out, fair to say?
Correct.
You ever been through anything like that before?
No, I haven't.
It's extremely scary, is it not?
It is.
Okay, and did it shake you up?
It did.
I think at one point, if I recall from the video, Miss Christensen said you want to take a minute, and I think you even walked away from the counter to kind of catch your breath.
I did.
Okay, and at that point, do you remember talking to Darian Aites about what just had happened, your co-employee?
I believe I did talk to him.
And you talked to Lillian Christensen?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Well, Judge, I'm not going into, if I may approach, Your Honor.
Okay.
Oh, turn my mic off, sorry, Judge.
All right, with the representation that the question is just, did you have the conversation, not anything beyond that, it's overruled. Go ahead, Mr. Strolla.
Thank you. Would you like me to rephrase the question, or can you remember it?
Rephrase, please.
Okay. Do you recall having conversations with Darian Aites about what happened that night?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall having conversations with Lillian Christensen, the assistant manager, that night?
Yes.
Okay. Did you also talk to other customers in the store about what had just happened?
I believe talking to them, but not getting into depth what I saw.
Okay. And anything, and again, everything recorded is fair and accurate, correct?
Yes.
Nothing you saw looked like anybody tampered with it, is that correct?
No.
And would you admit, if you did have conversations, they would be recorded and you'd hear the audio?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll say the video, we'll agree the video is kind of the best evidence?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you were there when the witnesses were brought in. Is that correct? You were inside the store still?
Yes, I was inside the store.
And how many witnesses were inside the Gate gas station?
I don't know the number, but there was quite a few people that were brought in.
About 10, maybe a little more?
Roughly.
Okay. And they weren't allowed to go on half of the store because that's where the potato chips and wine were, correct?
Correct.
So they were put on the other half of the Gate gas station store, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And everybody was about 5-6 feet away from each other. Is that a fair representation?
I suppose.
Okay. And in fact, do you recall saying that officers were actually standing outside the door of the Gate gas station?
They were.
Okay.
Once they arrived.
Right. And at one point, they weren't even inside. They were standing in front of that door so people couldn't come in and leave. Is that correct?
Yes. There was one, I believe, inside. He was coming in and out.
And matter of fact, when that one got out, do you recall if Miss Christensen actually locked the door so people couldn't come in and out?
Yes.
And that officer tried to come back in and was locked out, wasn't he?
Correct.
He got a little upset because he got locked out?
Yes.
Okay. And then he had Miss Christensen unlock the door again?
Mm-hmm.
That's a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now, and obviously people were still talking inside the Gate gas station, correct?
We were not talking about what happened because we were instructed not to.
Well, let me ask you this. How long were you there before those witnesses were brought into the Gate gas station?
That I don't know
Okay.
how long it was.
So when were you instructed not to talk to people about it?
When they were actually brought all the people inside.
Right. So people were still talking about it before there was even an instruction not to. Is that fair to say?
Just the people that were inside the store and nobody that was outside, like at the pumps and stuff.
Okay. And you have no idea if people outside were talking about it because clearly you wouldn't be able to hear that. You were inside. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay. And at that point, were people using their cell phones inside the store?
That I don't remember.
Was it possible that people could have even been texting?
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Sustained.
Did you see anybody texting?
Not that I recall. I didn't log it away.
Okay, so you weren't paying attention to the other people. You were paying attention to your kind of coworkers?
Correct.
Okay. And again, were you still pretty shaken up about it?
I was.
Okay. And is it fair to say that your entire observation and what you witnessed, my client never got out of the car to shoot. His hands were on the windowsill the entire time. Is that correct?
That is what I witnessed, yes.
Judge, no further questions. Thank you, Ms. Grimes.
Ms. Wolfson?
Just briefly, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Grimes, prior to hearing the first set of shots, those 3 shots, were you looking out of the window?
No,
What were you doing?
I was ringing at my customer.
Okay. Now, also the conversations Mr. Strolla just referenced, the ones you had with the people inside of the store, that was all prior to the police coming in to the store, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, I have no further questions, Your Honor.
May she be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Strolla?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am. You're excused. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
State's next witness.
Your Honor, state next calls Lillian Christensen.
Lillian Christensen, please. Good afternoon, ma'am. If you'll come forward for me, please. And right here, if you'll raise your right hand, the clerk will administer the oath.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
All right, ma'am, thank you. If you'll come right around here and have a seat for me, please. And if you'll scoot yourself up and speak directly into that microphone and speak up loudly so everybody can hear you, all right?
All right.
Thank you very much. Ms. Wolfson?
Good afternoon, ma'am. Could you please state and spell your name for the record?
Lillian Christensen, Lillian Lillian, Christensen Christensen.
Now, Ms. Christensen, do you live here in Jacksonville?
Yes, I do.
And are you currently employed?
Yes, I am.
Where do you currently work?
With a Quick Trip Texaco.
What do you do for Texaco?
I work in a convenience store
How long have you worked for Texaco?
since October
Was that of 2013?
of 2013, yes.
Now, Ms. Christensen, where did you work prior to your current job at Texaco?
Gate Petroleum,
How long did you work for Gate Petroleum?
16 years.
Ms. Christensen, what was your position within Gate Petroleum?
Assistant manager.
Now, prior to leaving Gate Petroleum, did you work at a particular store?
Prior to working for Gate,
Oops, strike that. Prior to leaving Gate, which store were you working at?
at the time I left, I was working on Bay Meadows Road.
Now, Ms. Christensen, I'd like to turn your attention to November 23rd of 2012. Were you working that day?
Yes, I was.
Now, which store were you working at that day?
I was working at the store located at the corner of Southside Boulevard and Bay Meadows.
What was your position at that particular store?
Assistant manager.
Could you explain to the jury what your duties entailed being an assistant manager?
Overseeing operations, making sure that things run smoothly.
Now, back on November 23rd of 2012, what hours were you working?
1 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Who else was working with you that day?
Mariah Grimes and Darion Aites.
Ms. Christensen, while you were working that day, did you work at a particular register?
I worked at Register 2.
And is it fair to say that when you walk into the gate store, then Register 2 would be straight ahead?
Yes.
Okay, with Register 1 to your right, Register 3 to the left?
If you were walking into the store, Register 1 would be on your right and 3 would be on your left.
Now, Ms. Christensen, can you explain to the jury what the layout is of the gas station in terms of whether or not there's a back office, if there's a back hallway, a bathroom, things of that nature?
If you were coming into the store, the first thing you would see would be the register area. Off to your right, the coffee area. Towards the back, you'd see a hallway where the restrooms would lead off to the right. You could see an emergency exit straight to the back. To the right of the emergency exit would be an office door, and to the left would be a door to the back room.
Now, Ms. Christensen, what happens in the back room? What is the back room used for?
There's the entrance to the cooler, there's a storage area, and there's a 3-part sink for washing.
During your shifts, then, when you're working at the gas station, do you typically have to go into that back room and into the office since you are the assistant manager?
Yes.
Now, at some point during your shift, Ms. Christensen, did something unusual happen?
Yes.
What happened?
I heard gunshots.
And where were you when you first heard those gunshots?
I was in the back room.
What were you doing in the back room?
Washing coffee carafes.
Do you remember how many gunshots you heard while you were in that back room?
I believe initially I heard 3 shots.
And from where you were, could you tell whether or not they were happening inside the store?
No, I wasn't sure at first.
Are there windows in that back room that let you see out into the store?
No, there is not.
What did you do after you heard the first set of gunshots?
I stopped what I was doing and started slowly moving out towards the hall area.
And why did you do that?
To try to start finding out what was happening, try to assess what the situation was.
Ms. Christensen, as you were coming out into that back hallway, did you hear more gunshots?
Yes, I did.
How many more gunshots did you hear at that point in time?
3 to 4.
From where you were when you heard that second set of gunshots, could you see the registers and out to the front of the store?
If I were looking in that direction, I would have been able to. I was not looking in that direction.
Could you tell at that point where the second set of gunshots was coming from?
I believed it to be more outside than inside.
And what made you think that?
It seemed more muffled than to be inside.
After hearing the second round of gunshots, did you then keep walking out front?
Yes, I did.
And were you heading towards the registers?
Yes, I was.
Now, prior to getting to the registers, did you hear any more gunshots?
Yes, I did.
How many more gunshots did you hear?
I believe it was 3 to 4.
After hearing the last round of gunshots, Ms. Christensen, where did you go?
At that time, I was right at the end of the hallway in an open area between the hallway and the register area. I stopped at that point.
What was the atmosphere like inside the store at that point in time?
It was quiet inside the store. But I could hear Mariah Grimes saying he's shooting at them.
Sustained. Please don't say what other folks might have said, ma'am.
Ms. Christensen, at some point, did you approach Mariah Grimes and get up to where she was?
Yes, I did.
What was her demeanor like?
She was very excited.
Was she panicked?
Yes.
Did you also then get up to where Darian Yates was?
Yes.
And what was Mr. Yates like?
Stunned.
Now, Ms. Christensen, when you walked up near the registers, did you notice whether or not there was a customer in front of Mariah Grimes' register?
Before I reached that area, yes, I saw a customer standing near Register 3.
And can you describe her for the jury?
Caucasian, dark hair. She was wearing what appeared to be a black skirt suit.
And Ms. Christensen, after hearing those gunshots, did you then see that same woman walk out the front door of the store?
I saw her walking towards the doors.
And did you say anything to her as she was walking towards the front doors?
I said, "Oh, hon, please don't go out there."
Did she listen to you?
No.
How would you describe that woman's demeanor as she was walking to the front doors?
Unsure.
Could you tell from where you were where she went when she walked out the front doors?
Yes, I could see that she was walking towards a car parked in front of the store.
Now, Ms. Christensen, do you know exactly where that car was parked?
It was parked in the first parking place next to the entrance of the store.
Could you see where that woman went?
I saw her get into the vehicle.
From where you were, could you see if anyone else was inside the car?
Once I had moved at Register 3, I could make out a image of a male behind the wheel of the car.
Okay, so in the driver's seat?
Yes.
Now, as you were looking out the window, Ms. Christensen, did you see whether or not that car left?
I'm sorry?
Could you see from where you were whether or not that vehicle that she had just gotten into, whether or not it left?
Yes, it did leave.
Okay, and how did that car leave?
Calmly.
Did you see the direction in which it went?
Yes.
And which direction did that car leave in?
Headed towards Southside Boulevard.
After you saw that car leave, did you then speak with your employees about what had happened?
Not that I recall.
Do you remember Ms. Christensen making a 911 call?
Yes.
Okay. And when was it that you made the 911 call?
There was someone in the store that said they had the tag number, and I wrote that down and made the 911 call after that.
Permission to publish you under the 911 call?
Yes, ma'am.
Just for the record, that states Exhibit 167.
Judge, if it hasn't been admitted, you don't have an objection, but I think it was.
It was admitted. It's
Okay.
Exhibit 167.
Jacksonville 911 Gaines.
My name is Lillian Christensen, Assistant Manager at Gate Store 1187, located at 8251 Southside Boulevard. We had shots fired in the parking lot. The person firing has left, but we did get a license number.
Okay.
The license number is 937, V as in Victor, M as in Mason, V as in Victor.
Okay. And what did you see the color, make, and model of that car?
It was a dark car. It appeared to be black. I couldn't tell the make or model. I'm sorry.
And was the person inside of the
The person was, there was a person here inside the store attempting to make a purchase. The person in that was driving the vehicle was the one shooting out of the vehicle at somebody else, but we don't know what happened. Right, oh, here's a police officer right here. Sir? Okay, there's an officer here. Thank you.
No problem. Direct to the 911 Gaines.
My name.
Now, Ms. Christensen, in that call, you can hear that an officer comes into the store.
Yes,
When that officer came into the store, did you give him the tag number that you had?
yes, I did.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
And for the record, I'm showing you as previously within evidence as Exhibit 170. Is this, Ms. Christensen, the tag that you handed over to the officer?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Christensen, does the Gate gas station have surveillance?
Yes, it does.
And as the assistant manager, do you know whether or not there is exterior surveillance footage at that particular Gate gas station?
We did not have exterior.
Okay. When police arrived on scene, did you aid them and help them with their investigation?
I did what I could.
Okay. And did that include then giving them a disc of the surveillance footage that you did have?
Yes, it did.
Have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
No further questions, Your Honor, at this time.
Mr. Stroller Cross?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Christensen. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Now, in relation to that DVD, you made a copy of the store surveillance for the officers that night, correct?
Yes, I did.
And matter of fact, you were proactive. You took it on your own to make them a copy without them even asking you, correct?
I asked them if they wanted me to, yes.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You approached the detectives and said, would you like me to make you a copy?
Yes, I did.
Right. So they were on scene but never asked for one.
They had not at that point.
Right. And isn't it also true that they gave you the timeline? They told you, we want you to start when the woman walked in and then when the woman leaves, correct?
I was playing the video back. An officer told me when to start, when to stop.
And then you burned them a copy, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that was for about that period of time. Do you recall that's when it was from, is when the woman walked in and the woman left?
I don't recall exactly.
Is it possible?
Yes.
Okay. And they didn't ask you, hey, give us an hour afterwards when all those witnesses were inside the store, correct?
No, they didn't.
Okay. And if they did, you would have given them that video, correct?
Absolutely.
And you would recall that they wanted an hour of all the witnesses inside the store, if that's true, correct?
Yes.
Now, you don't recall the number of shots that were fired. You just remember being in the back and hearing shots coming out, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I think last time we talked, you had grown up or you knew how gunfire was. You knew it was gunfire, correct?
Yes, I did.
All right. When you came out, when you come down that hallway, cash register 3 is off to your right, correct?
Yes, it is.
It's behind the cigarettes and everything there?
Yes.
So you couldn't see Mariah Grimes until you came around, I guess register 1 is what they call it? There's that little opening to walk in?
No, actually, from where I was standing in the hall, in that open area, yes, I could see register 3.
But could you see Mariah Grimes? Was she still ducking down or was she standing?
I wasn't focused on her. I was actually focused on the woman.
Right. And then the woman walked outside, correct?
Yes, at a later point she did, yes.
She had no fear or hesitation. Even you told her don't go out there.
She had no hesitation.
And that was even after you said don't go out there.
Right.
Now, when the witnesses were inside the store, the officers never physically separated people, correct? They just said don't talk about it?
That's correct.
And officers were going in and out. Is that true?
Yes.
Matter of fact, at one point, I believe you had the door locked because they had asked you to lock the door so nobody could come in and out?
Yes.
Okay. And then an officer tried to get back in and got upset with you because the door was locked? Do you recall that?
I don't recall that, no.
Okay. Do you recall locking the door?
Do recall locking the door.
And do you recall no officers being inside when you locked that door?
No, I don't recall whether there was an officer inside at that point or not.
Is it possible? You just don't have the recollection of it?
It's possible.
Okay. And obviously this was a traumatic event for you?
Yes, it was.
How many copies of that video did you get officers that night?
I only recall one.
Okay. Did they ever come back and ask you for any other video?
Not me personally.
Okay. Did they ever come back and ask you for any extended video of the audio that was being recorded inside the Gate gas station?
Not me personally.
Are you aware of one being made?
I believe that the manager was asked to make another disc.
And that was Barry Friedman?
Yes.
Okay. And he was the manager over you when you worked there?
Yes.
Okay. And would you agree that even when officers were there and everything that was going on, would you agree that it was kind of organized chaos going
Yes.
on at the gas station?
Yes.
Is that a fair and accurate representation?
That is how I would describe it, yes.
I'm not putting any words in your mouth.
Not this time.
Okay. Now, you heard your 911 call, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you had talked about you had the license. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Excuse me.
Okay. I believe the state showed you this exhibit. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And how do you recognize this?
That's my handwriting, and that appears to be one of the bags that we kept at the store.
Okay, so that's your handwriting.
Yes, it is.
Are you positive?
Yes, I am.
And that's a bag from inside the store.
That's where it would have come from, yes.
And I'm not putting words in your mouth.
Again, not this time.
Okay. At any time so far have I put words in your mouth, Ms. Christensen?
Today, no.
Okay. Anything we've talked about?
Not today.
Okay. So far we're doing okay.
So far.
Okay. And is it fair to say that when you talked to officers that night, you told them everything that you heard, saw, and did?
To the best of my ability.
And you indicated, correct me if I'm wrong, that the car that you believe the gunfire came from backed out and left, your word was calmly?
Yes.
Didn't squeal its tires, didn't take off anything like that?
Did not.
Okay. Did you ever see a car do that? Did you ever have a chance to see a red Durango squeal its tires and take off?
A red Durango?
Yes, ma'am.
Not that I recall.
Okay. And did you ever see a red Durango come back on scene?
I wasn't aware of a red Durango.
Okay. Even as we sit here today, you have no knowledge, personal knowledge, that you ever saw one come or go?
That point in time, I had no focus on a red Durango, no.
And you were familiar, obviously, with recording those DVDs. You were the assistant manager for a pretty lengthy time at Gate, correct?
Right.
And then you knew what you were doing, you knew how to record it, is that correct?
No.
You did not know how to?
It'd been so long since I had done it, I actually had, I believe, called the supervisor to get him to refresh my memory on how it was done.
So when you recorded it that night, it was actually coming from a Gate supervisor telling you how to do it?
How to bring up the system to do it, yes.
And then record it?
Right.
Okay. And you took that DVD and you gave it to an officer?
Yes.
Do you remember who you gave it to?
I don't remember which officer it was, no.
Is it the same officer you went up to and asked if they would like a copy of it?
No, it wasn't.
How did you get into a different officer, if you recall?
It was just a different officer, I believe, that came into the office while I was in there.
Okay. So you had approached an officer outside,
Yes,
go inside, call your supervisor how to do it,
yes,
and then you give it to another officer.
yes.
And then after that, you've never made another copy, correct?
Not to my knowledge.
Well, I'm asking about you, nobody else.
I only, to my recollection, I only burned one CD that night.
Okay. And that was just based on when the officer was over there watching you saying, okay, start it there, stop it there. Is that fair?
That's fair, yes.
Okay. Nothing further. Thank you, Ms. Christensen.
Anything further from the state?
No, Your Honor.
May she be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Stroller?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, ma'am. We appreciate you being here. You're excused. Can I see counsel at the sidebar for a minute?
Yes, sir, Judge.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we have one more witness that is relatively short that's been here for a while, so I'd like to try and take that person if we can. So, Ms. Wolfson?
Yes, Your Honor. The state calls Samantha Ickes.
Samantha Ickes. Good afternoon, ma'am. If you'll come forward here to the front and raise your right hand, the clerk will administer the oath to you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
All right, ma'am, if you'll come right around here for me and have a seat. Once you're comfortable, if you'll scoot kind of up to that microphone, be sure to speak right into it and speak loudly so everybody can hear you, all right?
Okay.
Ms. Wolfson?
Good afternoon, ma'am. Could you please state and spell your name for the record?
My name is Samantha Ickes, Samanthaeichas.
Ms. Ickes, do you live here in Jacksonville?
I do.
And are you currently employed?
I am.
Where do you currently work?
Advanced Auto Parts.
In which, is there a particular location of Advanced Auto Parts that you work at?
The Bay Meadows location.
Now, Ms. Ickes, how long have you worked at Advanced Auto Parts?
A year and 4 months.
And what is your current job description there?
A delivery driver.
Could you explain to the jury what it means to be a delivery driver?
I bring parts from our store to local garages and businesses.
Now, Ms. Ickes, when you make those deliveries, do you use a company car?
I do.
Are there multiple company cars that you have at your disposal?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Ickes, I'd like to turn your attention to November 23rd of 2012. Were you working that particular night at Advanced Auto Parts?
Yes, I was.
Do you remember what hours you were working?
Normally a 1 to close shift, so 9 o'clock, 1 o'clock to 9 o'clock.
1 o'clock to 9 o'clock? And Ms. Ickes, if you could just make sure that you speak up into the microphone that's in front of you. Now, on that particular night, Ms. Ickes, at some point, did you leave the store and go get a cup of coffee?
Yes, ma'am.
Around what time was it when you left the store?
Around 7 o'clock, right around there.
Okay. And Ms. Ickes, where did you go to get your cup of coffee?
The Gate gas station on Southside.
Is that a Gate gas station that you are familiar with?
Yes, ma'am.
And how often do you go to that gas station?
4 times a week.
Now, when you left to go get a cup of coffee, what car were you driving?
My white work truck.
And that's a company car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, Ms. Ickes, I'm going to show you a photograph. This is State's Exhibit 3. Looking at State's Exhibit 3, can you explain to the jury where Advanced Auto Parts is?
If you go down Southside and take a right onto Bay Meadows, it's the next stoplight on your left-hand side.
Okay, and can you put a little line where Bay Meadows is on the screen? If you touch it, you should be able to mark it. So from where you were working at Advanced Auto Parts, which direction of travel did you take to get to the Gate gas station?
I was headed east.
Headed east on Bay Meadows?
Yes.
And then was your intention to turn left onto Southside?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, Ms. Ickes, I'm looking at the intersection of Bay Meadows and Southside, and I know it's a little bit off of this photograph. Did you stop at that light that night where you stopped?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And were your windows up or down in the truck?
My driver's side window was down about 2 inches.
And what about the passenger side?
It was up.
Okay. Was anyone else in the truck with you?
No, ma'am.
And Ms. Ickes, did you have any music on?
No, ma'am.
Were you on the phone?
Yes, ma'am.
And who were you on the phone with?
My friend Jen.
Now, Ms. Ickes, as you were stopped at that intersection, actually strike that, what lane were you in when you were stopped at the intersection?
I was in the left-hand turning lane, but the right-hand lane to turn left.
Okay, so just for the jury's knowledge, are there 2 then left-hand turning lanes
Yes.
there? Okay. As you were stopped at that light, what did you hear?
I heard gunshots.
Could you tell where the gunshots were coming from?
No, ma'am.
And from where you were, could you see the gunshots at all, like the muzzle flashes or anything?
No, ma'am.
Do you remember how many gunshots you heard?
No, ma'am.
Do you remember if it was one big series of gunshots or multiple sets?
It was one big series.
Okay. Ms. Ickes, what did you do once the light turned green?
I took a left onto Southside and then took a right into the gas station parking lot.
And will you, you can draw on this as well to show the jury where exactly you turned right.
I turned left here and took a right into there.
And Ms. Ickes, this is now State's Exhibit 2. Is that up on your screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and is this then just a close-up of that entrance into the gate station?
Yes.
And can you show the jury then where you went once you turned right?
I came in through here.
Ma'am, you need to speak into that microphone.
I came in through right here and parked right in front of the ice machine.
Okay, and just so the record's clear then, and based on what you drew, you turned right once you came into the entrance and then turned left up and parked in front of the gate gas station?
Yes, ma'am.
Where did you park when you got to the gate gas station?
Right in front of the ice machine.
And once you parked, did you immediately get out of your truck?
No, ma'am.
What were you doing?
I was still on the phone with my friend Jen.
What did you notice as you were sitting in your truck?
I was sitting there finishing up my conversation, and a red SUV pulled in next to me.
When that red SUV pulled in next to you, did they pull into the spot directly next to you?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did you do once you noticed there was a car next to you?
I noticed that there were bullet holes in the side of the car, so my window was down a little, and I asked if everybody was okay.
Ms. Ickes, I'm now showing you State's Exhibit 43. Does that picture look familiar?
Yes.
And what is that a photograph of?
The car that pulled up next to me.
So when you looked to your left, this is what you saw?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Ickes, when you first asked if everyone was okay, were you still inside your truck?
Yes, ma'am.
Was anyone outside of the red SUV?
Yeah. The passenger side and I believe the driver also got out.
And those would be the front seats?
Yes.
And Ms. Ickes, I'm showing you State's Exhibit 4. Is that white truck your truck?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then State's Exhibit 8, is that a close-up?
Yes.
And Ms. Ickes, is that then exactly where you parked your car?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you see where the two people out of the car were actually standing? Could you see where they were?
No, ma'am.
Okay, at some point, did you see where they were standing?
They were standing in front of the car once I had gotten out of the car.
And when did you get out of the truck?
I had gotten out of the truck after they said everybody was okay. I got out and I walked to the front of the red SUV, and that's when someone said call 911.
When you got out of the truck, where were they located?
They were located, one, from my knowledge that I remember, one was in front of the truck next to me, and I don't know where the other one was.
Now, did you have an opportunity to observe their demeanor?
Yes, they looked shocked, is the way I could explain it.
And I believe, Ms. Ickes, you stated that at some point you called 911?
Yes, ma'am.
When was it that you called 911?
Right after someone said to call 911.
And where were you when you called 911?
Right in front of the ice machine, standing in front of the red truck.
After you were on the phone with 911, did rescue and Jacksonville Sheriff's Office members arrive on scene?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever see anyone else get out of the SUV or be taken out of the SUV?
Not that I noticed, no.
And Ms. Ickes, were you eventually asked to wait inside at the gate gas station?
Yes, ma'am.
And eventually, did you speak with a police officer that night?
I spoke to a detective, yes.
Have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Stroll across.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a moment, Judge. Good afternoon, Ms. Ickes. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Safe to say, pretty chaotic scene that night.
Yes, sir.
People running around back and forth.
Mm-hmm, yes.
Were you a little shaken up yourself?
Yes, sir.
Ever been through anything like that before?
Never.
Ever have a car pull up next to you with bullet holes in it?
Never.
Ever been around anything that had bullet holes in it?
No.
Now, you actually work in the auto industry, auto parts?
I do.
Okay. How long have you done that?
Over a year.
Okay. And over a year now or then?
Now.
Okay. Back then, isn't it true when the red SUV pulled up next to you, they didn't come screeching their brakes or coming in fast or revving the engine? They kind of drove in. You didn't even notice they pulled in. True?
True, because I was on the phone. I really wasn't paying attention to it.
Right. And if a truck pulls in next to you at a high rate of speed and brakes hard, you would have looked over and noticed that, correct?
Yes.
And that did not happen, did it?
No, I just saw it out of my peripheral.
And the car was already stopped, or the truck was already stopped, excuse me.
Yes,
Is that fair to say?
yes.
Okay. Now, in that aspect, you actually look over and say, is everybody okay? And you get no response. Isn't that true?
No, someone had said yes.
Okay. And then nobody asked you to call 911 until you get out of your vehicle, correct?
Correct.
And you were in your vehicle for 30 seconds, a minute, still talking to your friend?
Roughly, yes.
Because matter of fact, you were telling your friend, oh my God, there's a truck next to me shot up.
Exactly.
All right. You're telling her kind of the story of what's going on.
Yes,
Okay. You get out.
yes,
They then tell you to call 911.
yes.
And you said they seemed scared and shocked.
Just
something like
shocked.
that. Okay.
Like,
Did you call 911?
I did.
When you're on the phone with 911, are you still in almost a panic because of what's going on?
Yes, sir.
All right. Are you watching what other people are doing?
No, sir.
Okay. Are you keeping track of where people are coming and going?
No, sir.
And you said you're in front of the ice machine, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you can't testify, nor would you testify, where anybody was standing or where they were?
No, sir.
Now, when you called 911, did anybody have a cell phone in their hand?
Not that I recall.
All right. Do you recall which gentleman, what they looked like who asked you to call 911?
No, I do not.
Do you see what side of the truck they got out of?
All I remember is a gentleman getting out of the front passenger seat.
Okay. And that was the person that told you to call 911?
I do not recall who told me to
Oh,
call
I'm sorry. I
911.
apologize. You just remember him getting out.
Right.
What about the driver? Where'd he go?
I do not recall.
Even to this day, would you recognize him?
No.
Now, you were on scene for quite a while. I think they wouldn't even let you leave, correct?
Correct.
And one of the officers even said you had parked on some casings?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. You were driving your boyfriend's truck, correct?
No, I was driving my company vehicle.
All right. And did you have a chance when I did your depo to look over and have it reviewed? I think Mr. Guy read you the police report?
Yes.
And in that report, it was inaccurate. They said it was your boyfriend's truck, right?
Yes.
And it wasn't.
Right.
Did you ever tell him it was your boyfriend's truck?
No.
Okay. Now, after you get off the phone with 911, did you ever give your phone to somebody else to call 911, anything like that?
No, sir.
Did you ever give it to any of the guys driving the truck?
No.
You actually went in the store, correct?
Yes.
And at that point, did you call your boyfriend and tell him what was going on?
Yes.
Okay. And that was inside Gate Gas Station?
Yes.
How long were you inside Gate Gas Station talking to your boyfriend on the phone?
Talking to him on the phone,
Yes.
I had kept him updated throughout the whole process.
Okay. Telling him what's going on?
Right, because he was my manager at work where I was working, so I had to keep him updated on what was going on.
Okay. And do you recall where you were standing inside the Gate Gas Station when they brought you in?
I was standing in front of the counter.
Okay. And I know, and again, that gate's kind of odd. You walk in on an angle and it's an L shape. Do you remember where in the L shape you were in relation?
Right in the corner
Okay.
of the two spots.
So as soon as you walked into the door, right there on your left,
Yes, sir.
right next to a cash register?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware that there's video surveillance there?
Yes.
Okay. You aware if there's even audio surveillance there?
I am not aware.
Okay. But when you were in the store waiting to even talk to the police, you were still on the phone?
Yes.
Kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, even afterwards and you're in the store a length of time, it's still a chaotic, crazy scene?
Yeah.
People coming in and out?
Yeah.
Okay. And you're still on the phone talking to your boyfriend?
Throughout the process, yes, not the whole time.
Correct. And how long of a time frame were you in the Gate Gas Station?
I believe they let me go around 9 o'clock.
Okay. And you had got there obviously just after 7:40 when the shots were fired?
Right around there, yeah.
Okay. Do you remember how long you were outside before they told you to go inside?
No, sir.
And the officers never physically separated people. They just said, don't talk about it, correct?
Right.
But people were still talking inside the store?
Not about what had happened, but people were conversating, yes.
Right. And you were on your cell phone?
Not the whole time, but periodically.
No, I agree.
yes.
But you were using your cell phone?
Yes.
Were other people using their cell phone?
I don't recall.
All right. Were you even paying attention if they were?
No.
Okay. So we're not saying they weren't. You just don't know if they were because you weren't looking.
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever do anything else other than what you've testified and what you told the police?
No.
And everything you've said here today is what you told the officers?
Yes.
Okay. And again, just for clarification, you couldn't identify any of the men in the SUV?
No, sir.
And again, you don't know what they were doing or where they were?
Nope.
Even prior to you going into the store?
No.
Even while you were in the store?
I mean, the group of people who they put in the gas station, we were all kind of in the same area.
Right.
In the front of the store.
And again, you don't know what's going on outside.
No.
But you do say people are still coming and going, it's a chaotic scene.
Right.
Nothing further, Judge, thank you.
Ms. Wolfson, anything?
Just briefly, Your Honor. Ms. Ickes, you just stated, in response to one of Mr. Stroll's questions, that you were on the phone with your boyfriend?
In the gas station?
In the gas station,
Yes.
yes, ma'am. And that he was your assistant manager at the time?
Yes.
Were you having to explain to him where you were and where your work truck was?
Yes.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
May she be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Stroll?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're excused. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude things for today. It's about 5:15. And as I mentioned to you, we will resume tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. So yes, you can put your notes in your envelope there, and then the bailiffs will take custody of those for the evening. And then you'll be able to go back to the jury room and just pick up whatever belongings you have, and then be transported back to your accommodations. And thank you for your time and attention this afternoon and into the early evening. And we'll look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow morning. Remember, please do not discuss the case among yourselves or allow anyone to discuss the case with you. Obviously, do not look at television. I know that's kind of taken care of for you at the hotel, but just in case, don't watch television, don't read the newspapers, don't get on the internet. Watch out for banners going across the television set if you are watching some TV under certain supervision. And you understand all of that, and you remember my admonition, so keep that in mind. Y'all have a great evening, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. Thank you again.
Valerie, thanks for your
9 o'clock. Thank you all very much.
Like